Hey everybody, welcome back to the WBF podcast. I'm super excited to have Amy and Travis Biggers with me. How y'all doing?
Pretty well. How are you?
We're good. Excited to be
good.
here.
Yeah, it's exciting to have you guys on. Jody and I were just on here a couple weeks ago talking about how there's a need in the faith kids. Pastor Garrett and Leslie were opening up to us a little bit about it. And what better way to share about it than get on here and hear your hearts, what God's been doing, because it is amazing if you really think about it. I mean, how many kids were baptized just Sunday in the faith kids?
I think we were right at 4 down at the
Yeah.
river baptism. Yeah.
That's huge.
It's awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then you combine that with the youth. I think we were close to 15 or
Yeah,
so
it was
between
several.
the youth and the kids. So yeah, a huge turnout.
You know, people were driving by, and I was on barrier duty, and they're like, what are you guys doing down here? And I'm like, we're baptizing people. Over 40 people are getting baptized today. And just the shock on almost all of their faces was just really cool to see, you know. It's just cool to be the hands and feet, you know, be the disciples and stuff. So, Amy, how did this, go down? How did you start serving? And give me a rundown of what that looked like for you.
So when our second child was born, Finley, he had trouble going into the nursery on his own.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was very much always wanted to hold our hand, or, he was just very much a mama's boy. And so when I first started serving at Faith Center, I started serving in the nursery once a month for him, just to kind of get him, number one, just used to being in there, and then number two, I wanted to serve somewhere. I just didn't really know where. Mm-hmm. So I just started where my kids were. So I served in nursery for a while. And then when COVID hit and everybody, we weren't able to have church and weren't able to come. And then for a long time, we didn't have kids classes, back. And so when we kind of started coming back and revamping all of that, Pastor John asked if I would start teaching in the 1st through 5th grade age group. And so that was in 2021, late fall 2021. And it just blessed my socks off just to be in there with kids in 1st through 5th grade. Penelope, our daughter, was in there at that point. And there's something so special about being in kids' church with your kids, just serving alongside of wherever your kids, what season of life they're in. And so it's been really great. And we have got an awesome team, in that age group, 1st through 5th, and awesome volunteers. And so we really kind of found our niche right there. And then when Pastor Jeff came on last year, him and Pastor John decided they need someone to kind of collectively bring all the Faith Kids classes all together, from nursery to check-in to, all the way up through 5th grade. So there's kind of a cohesive feel there. And so they asked me and Travis to be Faith's directors. And so we're coming up on a year of doing that. So
that's so awesome.
Yeah.
How old is your son?
He's 8.
So from all the time from nursery all the way up,
Yeah.
you've kind of had your hand. That is so neat. And to
Yeah.
see it go from nothing to this explosion has got to be crazy. Travis, have you helped with the kids for a little while now, or when did you kind of hop on board with it?
Yeah, I guess pretty much as soon as she started teaching in 1st through 5th.
Yeah.
I started coming back there with her once a month. I don't know, she did mention this. I don't even know if you remember it, but sometime before she started teaching back there, Pastor John asked us both, this was probably 6 months or a year or something before we ever started back there. He asked us if we would ever consider doing children's ministry full time, and both of us were like, no,
yes.
no, we're not going to do that.
Nah.
No. And so it was a funny story about how, the Lord prepared you in certain seasons. Because in that season, we were both just no, no, we don't want to full time. That's not what we're called to, kids ministry. And then it was maybe not even a year later, he asked again for the 1st through 5th, and it was so that's when I once a month is when I started back there with her, 1st through 5th. So I don't do much smaller kids. My patience is.
He does a great job.
I do.
Yeah.
I have to be able to reason with the child is my calling, I think.
Yeah, whenever you're telling them something and it's right over, that is some of the funnest stuff right there.
But something that I love too is, he and I serving together. I think there's so much to say about spouses serving together, because not only are you bringing that partnership in for children to see a couple coming together and working together in a godly way, but also like I see him serving and ministering to children, and it just like overflows my heart. Like I see him in a different light in children's ministry than I see him on Monday through Saturday. So it's really cool to see the giftings that come out specifically is when he's in that first through fifth grade class, and it's cool just to serve together, and then with our kids in there too.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's awesome how he's called into this missionary work where he's going to other countries, and you get to go alongside and support him in that, whether it's staying home or even getting to go with him, and then him supporting you in this, and you guys getting to watch each other like grow in your giftings. It's truly amazing when you're doing that with your significant other, and you're really just able to take a step back and watch them and go, wow, this is like so amazing what God is doing. Yeah. Because I know, Travis, you say that you struggle with emotions, but I would say that over the past couple of years of getting to know you, your emotions have grown.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And actually we, you were there, we had that prayer meeting and prayed into that for myself. And, I think, just in general, like being part of ministry and ministering to kids, ministering in the mission field, I've taught on when we had men's meetings and stuff, just all of those things combined, that really just allows the Lord to work on your heart and to soften you up. And some of the barriers that I put up through military service and stuff, like you're able to remove some of those when you have tender moments with kids, or, when you see people in poverty overseas and stuff like that. So it's definitely been the Lord working over a period of time. And I did want to say how you mentioned us together. It's, when we're supporting each other as a spouse and the role that you're called in, like, I wasn't initially called in children's ministry, but I get blessed from it. And she wasn't called into the mission field. She never saw herself going anywhere.
Never.
That was never what she wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then she was able to go this spring, and, it's like
changed my life.
For her. So, when you support your spouse in that way, it, when you're tied together as one with God, when he calls one of you to something, he's really calling both of you. And it may not be the primary thing that you're called to, but he certainly has blessings for you in it.
Yeah.
And he'll grow you, like, John just said Sunday, he'll grow you outside of your comfort zone. So even if the gifting and calling that your spouse has is totally just something you would never see yourself doing, you stepping in faith and doing that with them will grow you. Yeah. What are some of the growths you saw, Amy, whenever you went to Uganda and had that experience, and what did you bring back with you for the kids here? I know it was
an overwhelming experience. The joy that the people have there is just so amazing, and regardless of what they have and don't have, because they don't have a lot, they just have an unbelievable joy, and they know it's from the Lord. They know where their joy comes from, and something that was super cool is that we went to these different churches and. Spirit-filled churches, and they would start speaking in tongues, and you couldn't always understand the language that they were like preaching in, but they would interpret into English. But you knew the difference when they were speaking in tongues and when they were speaking in their language. And it's so cool to see how the Spirit of God there, we know that God is everywhere, but just to experience that was just a real... it was eye-opening and just totally overwhelming to experience God there the same way that I experienced God, in our home church was just super cool.
And we see one thing that I always liked is both times I went there, the church services, things that they'd be preaching on is something that Pastor John preached on a week prior or maybe the next week or something like that. You just see the Spirit of God move. And then one thing that I always enjoy witnessing in the mission field is like she's saying, when they don't have, material things, they find their joy in the Lord. But it's just when you strip away everything because they don't have anything, you get, a clear picture of finding joy in the Lord, making, their provision is in the Lord. They have to have faith that the Lord will provide for them. So sometimes the comfort of the American lifestyle, which is a blessing to us, but we definitely get so jaded by that when you go somewhere and witness people who don't have, and they have to believe in God for the next meal, and they have to, have joy in the small things, like kids playing with trash, making, toy cars out of trash. These are things that bring them joy, but to us it's just, it's eye-opening to witness. So
something that was cool too about that is our kids here at Faith Center, they knew that we were going and they wanted to collect something. So this past time we collected sunglasses to take, which the kids in Uganda call them goggles. And so when we went this past time, the kids here collected all these sunglasses. I think it was over 100 pairs of sunglasses, and took them, and of course the kids there loved them, and we took pictures and were able to show the kids here, your sewing season. They wrote letters and cards, and so we were able to bring those pictures back and be like, you have a friend all the way across the world who, is thankful for you. And then the last time that Travis went, we sent shoes. The kids brought in, their shoes that they didn't need anymore, that were in still good shape, and we sent those over. So even at a young age, the kids here, in Paducah, Kentucky, are sowing and planting seeds, across the world, and they're excited about it. And I think it's awesome at such a young age. They have a heart to serve, a heart to love others. It just kind of comes natural for them. It's cool to watch
and a heart
that
to
in
give.
action, a heart to give.
And generosity.
Generosity.
Kids are unbelievably generous with
Yes.
what they have.
They are.
When you give them something to give into, So seeing that, and like we had the team go to Mexico here recently and, work on a church for school. So then you get to bring those pictures back and show them. And we have the map back there for the places that we've been so far as a church with Mexico and Uganda. But, hopefully we add more and more to that, where the kids get to sow into more and more kids around the world and find joy and generosity. And
we even have one boy, I think he's going to 5th grade this year, but the Lord just kind of planted a seed in his heart for missions, and he wants to go to Japan one day, and he's already saying, I'm going to go minister the word in Japan one day, and it's just super cool.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. I love how you put the, kids are generous whenever you give them an opportunity to.
Yeah.
It's like today's society will make you selfish and greedy and, envious of others, but instilling these, kingdom realities of loving one another and giving, once you put that little seed in their hearts, the abundance is just going to show. And some of Jody's favorite memories were in her youth, serving the less fortunate, serving meals or whatever that looks like. Whenever you instill that into them at the age they are at now, that will follow them wherever they go, and they'll always have that generous heart, because we are so blessed, and it's okay to give. It's better to give than to receive. So I love that. I love that that's y'all's heart and that.
I think one thing, that's over the last year for sure has just been, as I serve in the ministry she's called into, and she went to missions, the ministry that I'm called into. Seeing those come together back there has been, we've had Carly Loy went on a trip with her school. So we have people who go on these things, and being able to tie these together, all the ministries of all the different people who serve back there, making sure that we translate them to the kids.
Right.
So, because, some of those kids are going to be called to be, Faith Kids directors, and some of them be called to missions.
Evangelists and pastors and teachers.
We want to make sure that, all of the giftings that the people that are serving back there are able to use them and share them, even in some capacity, so that the kids have an idea of them, an exposure to them, partake in them in some way. It's more than, just watching kids back there for 2 hours. We're trying to, prepare them for their calling.
Yeah, and you guys start at such a young age. The 16-month and 3-year-olds are getting lessons, Yeah. I know that almost maybe just a little bit of it's sticking, but
anything counts.
But it counts.
Anything that you can fit into a 30-second attention span.
Oh
It will
yeah,
stick.
absolutely. And the music, I think, is one of the biggest factors in that age group, especially for my son Lucas. He just loves music. I hear the leaders back there telling me how he sings to the songs. He might mumble half the words, but he knows them, and that's something that I really enjoy because I'm constantly trying to put that. And he's just got that worshipful heart. So, like seeing those unique giftings, even starting at, a 2-year-old, and not even a 2-year-old, is truly special. So where did the ideas come for these videos, and like what are you guys trying to provide for these kids, even starting out in the smallest of them?
Yeah, so like he said, we're not just babysitting back there. A lot of time, I mean, I've had people come up to me and be like, "So you just watch kids back there?" I'm like, "No, we don't just watch kids back there." But no, we're basically training them because, like you said a while ago, they're the next generation of people who are going to lead people to Christ and evangelize, and they're going to be apostles and all that. And so we've got to start equipping them and planting those seeds at a young age so that they're able to grow and build on, because we want our ceiling to be their starting point. So everything that we've already learned, we want them to just start from there and to keep moving forward. And kind of a scripture that is our heart for faith kids is Matthew 19. Starting in verse 13, it says, "Then the little children were brought to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and pray for them. But the disciples rebuked those who brought them. And Jesus said, 'Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these.' And when he had placed his hands on them, then he went from there." And so I love how Jesus didn't just allow the kids to come. He didn't just say, "Yeah, come on, let them in." He also ministered them to them. He laid his hands on them. And, we can't cast our kids aside just because they're young and have short attention spans. Like, they can learn little things. Our toddler room, they say the verses, and they know. They have little hand motions that go with them. And they say them they do a little prayer before they eat their snack, and it's just precious. And ministry begins at home. A kid's main pastor should be their parents. But on Sundays, we want to be a place where kids can come and just reinforce what they're learning at home from the Word, and just build on that, and learn how to worship and learn how to pray for each other. I see as they get a little bit older, we have little prayer circles, and they'll do prayer requests, and we're all praying together. And some of these kids, they can pray. And so that's really cool to see. And we just want to equip them to just start early and just to grow in the Lord. And as they get older, they will not depart from it. That's a promise from the Word. So,
amen.
Yeah,
that's what really, it's the pastor's heart, and then it translates through her to the different kids ministries. But we were able to minister to a family at the riverfront last night, and we want, when kids are so young, they don't have the understanding of baptism and salvation and all that kind of stuff, but you want to give them the tools and the building blocks, and so that they can have their own faith. It's not about their salvation is not about mom and dad's faith. It's about the child's faith and understanding. So in order to have that, you have to have a good foundation. So that's why, starting from such a young age, you get memory verses and praise and worship. And then, by the time they get to the 1st through 5th grade, they have the understanding, and they have, maybe before then, but, they, in that age group, you're able to really build on that. And, we had one Sunday where we had 14 salvations or something like
15.
that. 15 on one Sunday. Yeah. So, you get that where these kids, their faith can be awakened because they're able to understand and they're able to make these decisions. And then we've had such a good relationship with Garrett and Leslie, our youth pastors, that we're just, we're trying to make that into one cohesive, what they
one
do.
Smooth ramp.
One smooth ramp of faith. We're trying, even from the babies all the way up to teenagers. And then, when they're sitting in big church, getting fed by Pastor John and Jeff, it's just, we want to make sure that it's one transition all the way up.
Yeah.
And so, we don't want to do nothing for the first 5-6 years of their life, and then expect them to learn from 1st through 5th, and then have a gap of middle school where all these teams are trying to work together to grow these kids to be the next generation of ministers.
Yeah, there's so many different like stepping blocks in those years, so many like crucial moments in your life that, hard stuff is happening. You even face tribulations and so to be surrounded with like-minded people who are going to pour into you and not just let you just fall by the wayside when you're going through these things and continue, the whole time you guys have been talking, what's been ringing in my ear is awakening and equip. Just like you're saying with like the pastor's heart of this church is awaken and equip, for your purpose. And even starting then to awaken and equip for you guys and like Pastor Leslie and Garrett to all be on the same page. I just find that to be a beautiful thing to get him involved, get him around them, get them comfortable, because I feel like so many of our youth now might have not been going to this church, since kids. Yeah. And so they haven't had that instilled in them. There's so little instilled in some of them. So setting that groundwork and foundation, you can't overstate it and how important it is for them to be getting that now,
Yeah, and like you said, Garrett and Leslie, they're one of the teams back there. They lead a Sunday in 1st through 5th, so they're getting to know these kids before they get into youth. And then we were able to go on youth ramp this last year, so it's just a continuation of that relationship with some of these kids. And so, like you're saying, we just want to – kids go through a lot. You'd be surprised sometimes when prayer requests come out from a kindergartner, the level of things that they're going through at such a young age just sometimes breaks your heart. So you have to have a team all the way from the nursery through Pastor Garrett and Leslie that are able to cohesively help these kids, kind of step into their own and discover their own faith in Christ and discover their purpose, because not everybody discovers their purpose as a teenager, but, having people around you that can help you understand what you're going through and point you in the right direction rather than you trying to find it in the world is paramount for these kids. So,
have any of them ever asked you guys questions that even like, I know you just kind of alluded to it, but just took you back so far where you're like, wow, that I need to be praying about that. I need to be seeking the Lord for guidance.
Oh, there's definitely been prayer requests sometimes that, you just, you do all you can on a Sunday morning to prepare to minister to these kids, and then sometimes something will hit you and you're like, I wasn't prepared for that. I need to, so you just, in the moment, ask for wisdom and stuff. So, there's been some times where maybe you have to minister to somebody, on a separate, pull the young man aside and, try to talk things through with them. So you definitely have that. And that's what God has made a great team for. We trust the people on every Sunday, every classroom, every Sunday, we have people in there that want to minister to kids, and that's what makes a difference.
And our teachers are amazing in that it's so funny because if you look just for the 1st through 5th grade, for example, we have 4 teams of teachers, and we're all so very different. It goes from Dylan Street, who's just he does amazing job at just winging it and flying by the seat of his pants, and I admire him so much for that, because I'm have to have a plan, and but it just, and everywhere in between. But the thing that's the most important is that we're all we come in ready to be Spirit led. And so, and that I know that goes across all of our teachers and all the classes, is that we come in, ready to pray and ready to be like, God, whatever you want to do today, that's what we want done. Like, we just want to be vessels of honor, ready to be used by you to pour out what you put in us into these kids. And going back to what you asked, sometimes kids will ask a question in the Bible, and I'm like, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll find out. And I think that's good, because like, they need to know we don't know all the answers. Like, we're still growing. You never stop growing. Last year when we went to Kids Ramp, they talked about climbing Mount God, and you climb and climb and climb and climb, and you will never reach the top until you get to heaven one day. But you're never going to know all there is to know about God in this earthly life. And so it's important that our kids know that we're still growing too. Like, you just got to keep asking questions, keep digging in the Word, and asking people who are, above you and discipling you and seeing that in real life.
Yeah, if anybody was curious of serving, that's something I would tell them is like, in serving, you're going to grow so much more than you realize.
That's
because
true.
you're going to be put in situations where you might not know the answer or what, and you're going to want to seek it out in a new and inspired way. You know, nothing gets me more excited about the word than whenever I have to teach it to a group of people, because I'm like I want to, and it's always a lesson for me. It's always it's always like, well, I needed to hear that, and so it even adds a little bit of an added like oomph to it, because it's always like, oh God, I needed that this week. I needed that in my life. You know, I'm preaching to myself here as I'm giving the lesson. And something with teaching to kids, to youth, adults, is the sermons aren't really all that different.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, well, you're not really simplifying it too much more. And like a lot of those, you know, kids stories that kids are always used to hearing, Samson and all, they're very important stories, you know. And so you guys are really diving into stuff that they're going to be hearing those same kind of sermons their whole life, hopefully. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's God's word is living and active. So you can read the same story 40 million times and get new revelation from it 40 million times. It's so cool. Yeah. And our younger classes, because, you know, we have a kind of a slower pace. So they'll learn the same Bible story for like a month. So 4 weeks in a row, they'll talk about Samson. But every week is a different like idea that they pull from that story. So they hear the same story, but they're pulling different pieces of like, you know, how to learn from it, which is really cool. I think that's neat.
Absolutely.
And it helps with that attention span. You know, really soak in. You get a couple, couple
and they do the same verse all month long. So it's that repetition and that. So
back to some of the growth you guys have seen since you guys have, even just in serving to taking over, what are the numbers like back there on like a weekly basis? What are the average numbers?
So when I first started after COVID, I think across the board, nursery through 5th grade, we were averaging somewhere around 55 to 60 kids. In all of Faith Kids. And now we're about 90 to 100 every Sunday morning. Yeah.
Yeah. So getting pretty close to double. There's some, you know, depending on the time of year, you know, summer's kind of slow and stuff like that, but there's sometimes we get close to 60 back in first through 5th.
The 1st through 5th grade class.
So, they've had to pull out extra chairs several times, you know, 60.
That's an awesome problem to have.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have, but we get close to 60 in one classroom. So, you know, it's,
yeah, you always got to be prepared on Sunday here, because some weeks there'll be some seats missing, and then some weeks it's like it's a packed house. Just 2 or 3 weeks ago, completely packed. So you never know. You just got to come with your A game.
Yeah.
And so, how many salvations have you guys seen?
We've had, so that one Sunday last summer we had 15, and Finley was in that 15, our son, and that was, man, that was so amazing. I invited kids to come up so I could kind of identify who had raised their hand, and they came up, and he came, and I just like, hold it together, Amy, you can do this. It was such an awesome moment. And then there was one Sunday with Dylan in there, and I think there was about 8 that Sunday when he was teaching, and then we had another Sunday where there was 5 in one Sunday, and our nephew was one of those. So. And it's cool. I love also hearing, I've heard several times kids coming to me, you know, on Sunday and be like, hey, guess what I did at home this week? And, you know, where parents are leading their kids in salvation at home through the week. And that's really, I love to hear that, because that means they're talking about it at home, and you know, there's no greater honor than leading your own child to the Lord and being able to baptize them. And that's really awesome. So I love hearing about that too.
Yeah, I mean, you're like in this moment of pouring into the kids, and then next thing you know, it's your own. I mean, that's got to be an amazing moment.
She cried.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Has it affected how you guys minister at home, being able to serve? You know, has it like helped you understand kids a little bit better, being around so many of them?
I think for me, we have really good kids, so maybe it's really hard. But for us, we like Penelope was in that class from the beginning with her.
Right.
You know, back at that time frame when we started back up, I think she probably was in 1st or 2nd.
Yeah, she was young.
So once we came back from COVID, Penelope was always in there, and Finley's still in there right now. So it's almost like one of those things that maybe like you take for granted because they've always been in the class with us type thing, so we get the chance to minister them on Sundays. So then it makes it easier when we're reading the Bible together because we already have that,
right.
Sort of.
We know what they're learning.
We started out that relationship, when they came back from COVID that, hey, we're going to read the Bible together, and we're gonna, they just see Amy up there doing the lesson, and that's just normal for them. So if we do it at home, it's the same. So maybe we have a bit of an advantage in that because we kind of started back with them at the same time. So,
but Penelope's in youth now,
and
so now,
week, right?
It's really cool to hear her when she goes on Wednesdays and I'm like, so what'd you learn? You know, and she always, can tell me different things. I'm like, oh, that's good. Tell me more. And sometimes I learn from what she tells me, and so that's also really cool. Yeah,
I've talked with Garrett about serving back there in the youth and stuff, but I wanted to give Penelope her time to sort of, settle in and all that kind of stuff and have her own time there. And it's been fun to, kind of be able to get a second perspective of, now we're not we're not in the class that she's in, so you get the bird's eye view of tell us what happened to youth today.
It's like, Garrett, I trust you, but now I'm really trusting you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is a new season for us for sure. And
yeah. I mean, that's awesome, man. Just God's growing you guys into this season. So how much help is needed right now back there? A bunch, right? What would be like an ideal number of like volunteers for it to be a comfortable amount?
Yeah. So right now, I think we have across the board right around 50 people who serve. 50 adults. And 20 teenagers, which these teens that are in youth, they have a heart to serve, and I love it. Every week I have a new teen coming, hey, I want to serve in Faith Kids, and I think that's amazing. I think that's awesome. But we also need adults in every class because there are, teens that are coming and they're excited to serve, but they also have to learn, it's new, it's just kind of like starting a job. You have to learn everything you have to do. And so, they're also in that learning stage. So adult wise, we have about 50, and that covers children's check-in up at the front where they check in, nursery, toddlers, 4 through K, our buddy room, which is, I don't know if you know about buddies, but it's we have a resource room, and we have a team who serves in there that kids with special needs can go in there and have a place to escape, and they work one-on-one with an adult buddy. And
how many kids are in that right now?
Currently we have 2.
Okay.
And so their adult buddy will take them into the classroom that fits their learning needs. But when that child needs an escape or needs to get out, they have a safe place where they can just go and chill for a little while and get what they need and can work one-on-one in that resource room
that
together.
Adult part's with them.
Yeah, all morning.
Right.
Yeah. So we currently have 2 kids in there, but and then also our 1st through 5th is included in that 50 as well. And so really in all classes, we could double the number of volunteers that we have because my heart is for what would be ideal in my mind is in every single class we have one teacher each week that only serves once a month. So like in 1st through 5th, we have 4 groups of teachers and in every class there's 4 groups of teachers. So everyone only serves once a month. And then also we need volunteers to come in and to support those teachers, whether it be handing out snacks or cleaning up or sitting with a toddler who's maybe they're uncomfortable or, just anything, just people to come alongside the teachers and just to support. I think sometimes people get nervous about serving in children's ministry because they're afraid they're going to be asked to share the Bible story or lead something, and we need those people, but we also need people just to come and just to love on kids and just, when they extend their hand to give a high five, know that they're extending Jesus's hand and giving a high five, that his love is coming through them and just sitting in the floor and playing, and I think people sometimes don't think it's just as simple as that,
Yeah.
Sometimes kids come in and they just need to know someone cares. They just need to know somebody loves them. And, You know, we just want to show Jesus's love to them. So we could double across the board and be good.
Having the assurance. Go ahead. Sorry.
Especially at the rate that our church is growing,
right.
We've seen so much growth in the past year. If you look at a year from now, we don't know what that looks like. We could have multiple services. We could have, we just don't know. And so I would rather be prepared for more growth,
right.
going forward, rather than hustling at the end and being crazy
or being short-handed or having to use people a lot, whole months in a row, and then get burnt out. Because we, like we talked about through this whole thing, is these people who are serving back there have a heart to minister to kids.
They do.
And you just don't want to take advantage of that. And like, I know you really love these kids. How about you serve 4 weeks in a row? How much do you love these kids? Really put it to the test.
You have to allow people. You can't pour out if you have nothing pouring in.
Right.
And so we want everyone to have opportunity to be in the sanctuary, to receive and be ministered to, so that they can turn around and minister. And something that I pray on the regular is Matthew 9 at the end. Jesus says to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest to send workers to the harvest field." And so, God, you're giving us this harvest, so we're going to ask for the laborers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was listening to Matthew today while I was delivering mail, and I'm teaching to the youth in a couple weeks. I think I'm going to teach about the master gives the servant 5, and then 3, and then 1, and the one with 5 doubles and the one with 3 doubles, but the one buries it.
And
if we think about our giftings, and we think if we're just going to bury it inside of us and never actually use it, it's just like a lazy. I think it says lazy and wicked way of living, and it's like just being faithful and doing this has grown me so much, and whatever the Lord does with this is so awesome. And I love getting to talk with people like you guys, and it inspires me to want to get back in there, you know what I mean, and help with those kids. Because you're right, if you need double the amount of what you have right now, you're definitely going to be straining somewhere and straining someone, and it's hard to have the heart of wanting to do it if they get burnt out, you know what I mean?
Yeah, in a perfect world, we would have enough people where you just have to, create a list ahead of time and not leave people off, but you have a surplus, and people be like, "Oh, I can't serve this month," and you're like, "Oh, okay, that's all good because we got 2-3 extra people, we can." But right now it's
a bench.
Yeah, we got a lot of
like someone who serves bi-monthly or something.
Or like a reserve team for something like that. Like that would be ideal. Right now, it's sort of like if you're shorthanded, you got people serving multiple weeks, and like you're saying, it can be even we're over it, and it can be taxing on us sometimes. Where you're just like, man, I just want to sit in service. You listen to it afterwards, and you get the sermon or whatever, but you don't get the fellowship and the worship and the being able to go up in prayer and all that kind of stuff. And so
absolutely
sometimes you're just like, I need to be back in service, but you can't because you don't have enough people to you got to cover down somewhere. So it's definitely a big need. So but the Lord said He'll provide. So we have faith.
The people and the volunteers and the teachers that we have are just, they're off the charts amazing. They're just they're so good. And anytime I go into one of the other classes, just pop my head in, I just smile because I know God's working in here, and it's just cool to see everyone's different giftings and different talents that the Lord has given them, and they're using those, to pour into the next generation. It's really amazing.
And I think you see that, and when you go around, especially with her, 'cause she does it every Sunday, but I've done it a few times, when you pop into each class, and you can just see how God has put these little teams together.
Yeah.
In like the 1st through 5th, it's not always the same people who work every time together, but it seems like when you have a team that's in there, it's like you have people who are just better at certain things than other people, and like even in different classes, you have a couple that pair as far as like leading it, and they have strengths that play off each other, and so like
absolutely
when people are called into something and they answer the call, like Jesus knows He has a plan. All you got to do is say yes. He's not going to put you in, He's going to put you somewhere where you can succeed, and with somebody you can succeed with. And so you just go in there with faith and you say yes to the Lord. And then when we get to walk around and like see this bird's eye view, and especially her, and you're just like, man, that's that's a great team in there on this Sunday.
Look
like,
at God.
Look at God. Look what he did there in the nursery. So it's cool to see. So,
and I know every single one of them love our kids because they're always interacting with them every time they see them. And if you serve back there even for a little bit, you're going to start forming a heart for these kids. Yeah. And like, what better thing can you do than to minister to people and then watch them grow up and watch them become like little people and then, grown people? You're like, what? Autumn's like been in the nursery forever and she's watching, Caleb and others grow into the next seasons of life and stuff. And you always know you had like a little part in that,
I think this is, we've had, we've been over this for a few years. Well, she's been a part of First Through Fifth for a few years now and over it for a year. And this is kind of the first year. We've had a few who've graduated out of First Through Fifth, like, onesie, twosie. We're really starting to we had a big group of like second, third, and fourth graders, and they're all like starting to phase out of us and go into youth. And so, like you're saying, you get that perspective of like, man, we've known these kids for forever, or like kids that come out of the kindergarten class, now they're in yours, and now they're like in third grade or something. It's you get to see them. In a few years they'll be with Garrett, and it's just like you get to watch their faith grow and watch and go to ramp with them, and all these things, and you have these memories of ministering to these kids, and it's an honor for sure.
Yeah, it really is.
How many teachers do we have right now in the classes?
So in the toddler class, we have 3.
Okay.
In the kindergarten class, we have 3. And in 1st through 5th, we have 4.
So we need a couple of teachers along with a bunch of supporting cast.
A lot of supporters.
Because something for me that helped me serve was knowing that there was someone who was sure of the duties, knew what the list was. Yeah. Because it was like, when we first started, there wasn't anything, and then it was like, we got something. And I was like, okay, we know, play, clean up, do something, clean up. There was like a system. And so really being able to just come in and be the hands-on. I'm going to distract 4 or 5 kids. Or I've got the one really crazy one. Y'all go and, y'all keep the crowd at bay. And so I think
everyone is essential.
Everyone
when
is essential.
you have a classroom full of kids, everyone is essential. It doesn't matter if you're changing diapers or giving snack or holding a kid. And Virginia is amazing. I go in there and the toddlers, and there will be a toddler screaming, and she'll just pick them up and walk them to the window, and the window's like her sweet spot. She's like, look at the bird and look at the car, and they're just like, it's like magic. They're totally fine. But just people just to come in and just support those teachers and just be a part. And that doesn't make it any less of serving for God, because anything we serve at, anything we do, anything that we use our giftings for, we're doing it for the Lord. We're doing it. You can do it as an act of worship if your heart is in the right place, and saying, God, I'm here to serve you. As I'm serving these little ones, I'm here to serve you. And something that Sierra Street told me this past week that I just loved, she said, I'm going to come in for 2 hours once a month and give 110%. And I'm just like, that's amazing. Like, that should be our heartbeat, and if we have the amount of people that we needed, it really would just be 2 hours a month to come in and just give it your all. And man, what an impact that would make on our kids, and how that would be so awesome.
And sometimes, like, for instance, in 1st through 5th, you might have 60 kids back there. Physically, you're like drained at the end of those 2 hours, but spiritually, you're so filled up. Yeah. And so, you give it all, your all. And like they're saying, you need everybody in all classrooms. You need all kinds of people, because in 1st through 5th, you may have the little kids who want to sit and color for, the before we start class and stuff, and you may just sit down there and color, or maybe you may have some boys who want to throw a ball, or you may have some boys who are wrestling, so you need a dad figure in there, so you need like everybody to like play with and talk to and pray with. It just takes all kinds of people.
And having a male figure in the classrooms is really a game changer, because they male figures bring such a presence into the class. And Zach Horman serves back here when Julianne teaches, and when he's back there, it's like the whole class atmosphere is different, and these little boys are just drawn to him. And in our older classes, we have men who serve as well, and there's a couple in kindergarten too. But it just brings such a calming presence, and then also, these boys have godly men that they can look up to, and that they're watching, and they're seeing how they respond to different scenarios, and they're seeing how, they can control their emotions, and, just walking out in a godly example. And that's huge to have men back here to be that for these kids.
I feel like it's probably got to be like a big thing in almost every church is the amount of women who serve versus the men with the kids. People get all...
And that's natural, I feel like.
Yeah,
because
right.
women are just naturally nurturing.
Yeah, and I think it's a thing of, making sure that we as a team and we as a church make sure that men know how valued they are.
Right.
Like, maybe a shock to people, but it's not my nature. I'm not a very nurturing person. It's maybe a shock to everybody, but I'm not a nurturing person. But I have a role back there. When boys are getting too rowdy, or boys want to fight each other over a basketball,
right.
It takes there's a biblical and a God-given authority that men have, and so making sure that men know that we're not asking you to come back there and do something that you're not good at or you're not called to. We're asking you to come back to be a godly man and to just represent the Lord through a man, rather, so they get both perspectives of what God has given women.
We want you to thrive in your role, not try to change it.
Yeah, I don't want you to do something you're not called to, and I don't want you to try to be, I'm not trying to be Amy back there. Amy has a tenderness to her that, I'm not trying to do. I'm trying to be Travis back there so that they can see God through Amy and they can see God through Travis. And, just like you said, it's good for both the girls and the boys to see, both sides of, what God has given people. So
that's awesome, guys. So how can people get involved? What's step one of I want to serve in the kids? What's my first step?
Yeah, so you can text 94,000 and just say, hey, I want to serve in Faith Kids. That would be the best way to do that. And then I'll get your number and we can communicate, and we will figure out where you want to serve in, or maybe you're not sure which age group is good for you. We can start in one place, and if you say, hey, this is not for me, we'll move you somewhere else. We don't ever want people to feel stuck, we want to make sure it's a good fit. So usually what happens is we get in contact, and we'll put you in with one of our teachers on a Sunday and see if you like it. And if you do, then we go through, get some paperwork done, and then you get on the schedule every month. And for volunteers especially, it's just once a month, 2 hours a month.
Yeah, and there's some of that paper, just like the logistics part of it. There's background checks to do, and going through discovery for the church. Just all that kind of stuff is just sort of like a, we want to make sure you're plugged into this church in the right spot first, and that you're called to be here by God. And then once all that, and you want to serve, it's just about getting you signed in and registered and put on the different church center apps and whichever group you're going to be in. And so, like she said, if you want to try out the nursery and it turns out you don't want to change diapers for 2 hours, you go up to the next one. If that's not your thing, you can try different ones. You're not signing and, you're stuck here for 5 years.
No, you guys are always super, you work with the parent, you work with the people who are serving. You don't ever, I never ever felt obligated to do one thing or the other. You guys always have a good heart in that. I just think, during announcements, it's good to mention it, but I think taking a longer time to really sit and talk to you guys, explain your hearts, the passion, the changes you guys have seen, maybe will open up some more hearts and some hearts to serve. Because, I think sometimes we get comfortable in America. We're comfortable, and we just sit there and we let those little presses pass us, that little pressing of the Holy Spirit for that 5-minute announcement. Woo, that was tough. You sort it out, and then you go back and you live and you just forget about it. And so really I'm going to hopefully put this on the page so everyone can see it and get y'all out there. So hopefully we can see some growth and some help come, and genuine help.
Yeah. And what we have talked about is just the people, putting it out there, and the people who feel that gentle prodding from the Holy Spirit, or strong prodding from the Holy Spirit, and saying yes. But what we have seen, the growth we've seen, and the blessings we've received from it is because the team that we have are people who have the heart to minister to kids.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't want to double our numbers with people who feel obligated or feel pressured. We want to double our numbers with people who are looking to minister to kids every Sunday, because they're going to be blessed. The kids are going to be blessed. The church is going to grow. That's what we're seeing. That's what we've seen so far, is because we have such a good team of people who just love the Lord, love kids, and love sharing the Lord with these kids. And, we've gone from 20 in 1st through 5th to 55, 60 in 1st through 5th. So, it's just, but we have that because we have people who love the Lord sharing Him. So
it's awesome seeing people get in the right place at the right time.
Yep.
It's never degrading to who was in the position beforehand or anything like that, but getting to talk with Alexis on here and hearing her story, and people like Virginia, and then you see people like Julianne, and you see them getting in there at the right time, at the right place, at the right heart, and you can see a change, you can see a shift, and so it's really awesome just from the outside looking in to see that.
Yeah, I think it's important to, like, we are just a steward of God's ministry. So, if we're in this role for 1, 2, 5, 10 more years, and we step out of it, and the next person, it grows from 120 kids to 300 kids. Like, it wasn't us. This is God's. They were called at that time for that purpose. We were a season for a reason, and then they're coming in for a different season. So, like you're saying, it's good to see people step into their season and say yes to the Lord.
Christians need a fresh revelation of it's okay when prosperous things happen.
After
you or before you. It doesn't. You take yourself out of the equation and just and praise God in it. You know, if your neighbor or your brother or sister are profiting, we should be praising the Lord and glorifying God together. Yeah. And really uniting together. It's just seeing those right people. So we'll be in prayer for that. You guys got anything else for the people before we hop off here?
I just want to say, anytime God has ever invited me into anything that was ever outside of which is always outside of my comfort zone, I have never once regretted saying yes.
Yeah.
And I have always grown in the Lord and in the things of the Lord, and He has always blessed me. And so sometimes it's scary and unnerving to step into something new, to step into something you're not sure about. But if God's inviting you can just trust Him that it's going to be good, because He only gives good gifts.
Yeah, and He always makes a way, and He always closes the door when it's time to close the door. So we've had that as well, that sometimes sometimes we've been walking into something with the Lord, and then, you pray about, you feel like He's leading you somewhere else. You're like, God, if you're leading me somewhere else, close the door, and then boom, it's closed. You're like, okay, well, that was easier than I thought it would be. If you just follow Him, it's like, you kind of can take your mind off and just trust the Lord.
Absolutely. I got to say before we hop off here, you guys are inspiring. Amy, when you give the announcements, it's so energetic, and I can feel your passion.
I'm going to do the wave next time.
Yeah, I just feel it, and you go through motions and stuff. It's just, I can feel your passion up there. And Travis, whenever you speak, I just want to listen. I feel like you have so much wisdom. And I just want to thank you guys for the friendships that we're forming, and thank you guys for what you're doing.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Awesome.
It's awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll talk to y'all later.